I have also been pilot testing this version of the course. So Priya, it will be nice, especially to get feedback from you at the end, because you've done a couple of these, both you and Zintle. So it'll be nice to hear from you how this version of the course has been working for you. And then, because I'm quite keen to run it again. So when we get near the end, we can just have a little kind of quick check-in on, what to do with the course next, because I am keen to see whether we can run it again. So let me open my video and show you that it's a cold day in Makanda. Freezing wind outside. You can remember them, Pri. Yeah. Okay, so we are now in session 4 of our course. Let me go into the little PowerPoint that I'm just using to guide us. And just to remind everybody that the course is both on the Miro board and also in the PowerPoint. And I have also loaded this PowerPoint onto the Miro board, so you can download it off the Miro board. So you have two ways of viewing and seeing the course and what's going on with the course. So today is our last session, and we've had quite a break between the last session and this session because we were aiming to just spend a bit of that time on writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting, writing and rewriting until we get to what we feel is a good first draft. So I thought that I would start there this morning with checking in with all of you on how that first draft work has been going and where you feel you are. So I thought we'd start here. So today we're going to take our story from, here we are in first draft mode, and we now need to move towards submission of the paper. So I'm going to just look at a couple of things to remember, to think through, to work on as we move towards submission. Let me just clear some of these blocks here on my screen. And let me just clear the other one. And then we can. Okay. So I thought that what we could do is we could start with a sort of group check-in and just see how you're doing with your one key point, which is the golden thread. You'll remember last time we talked about this golden thread. And we don't, just to hear how is the best version of your first draft looking at this point? What is your key argument? What is your main claim? Is your main claim well covered or backed up by evidence, literature, your own data? Do you have a clear flow? Is the paper coming through in the style that you're aiming for? For example, a think piece, a research paper, narrative case study, depending on what you are aiming for. And then this nice big question, are you avoiding doing too much, making one point clearly across the paper rather than having too many things going on in one paper? So I thought we could just do a bit of a group check-in and take, since we're not also that many this morning, it'll be nice to just hear from each of you, and then we can move from there in terms of where we are together. And then, as I said, I'll work through some of the bits and pieces that one needs to think about to finish off a piece. So let's start here together. And if anybody would like to share what they've been doing, then you can just pop your hand up, open your mic, one of the two, and just join and maybe speak a little bit to some of this. Where are you? How's it been going? Anybody like to start? Silence. Priya. Yes, morning, Priya.
Morning. I can get us going.
Yes.
So Shireen and I are working on a methodology paper, and we started very studiously writing and writing and writing and writing, and just started feeling completely overwhelmed by how not useful it was as a method paper to help practitioners. It was a nice academic paper with big ideas and all of that kind of thing. So what we did was we actually took a step back and we thought, okay, what do we need to make it useful for researcher practitioners or practitioners who were also interfacing with research? And we shifted who we were writing for. So we shifted to write for some of our community of practice who helped design and experiment with the methodology. And we backgrounded the theory and the very careful thinking about the theoretical ideas underpinning the method, and we foregrounded the what did we do, and then we looked at how do we support what do we do by giving enough information about why we did it that way. So we're experimenting. We're trying a semi-infographic style. So we've got 3 parts in each of the 3 main sections of the paper. We've got a theory and concept section, a method section, and a findings and reflection section. In the theory paper, we've got little bubbles, infographic bubbles with the key concepts and links to the coherent references. We've got a careful narrative summary that has a more simplified language, and we've got illustrative vignettes from our cases. And then we do the same in the method section. We've got the key activities. We've got a narrative to explain, to link to why we did it that way and what we did. And then the biggest parts of that are the illustrative vignettes to show in practice across the different projects. And then the findings, we go back to the key concepts, reflect on how those concepts were then made manifest in the project. So we're trying it out. It feels much better not to be focused on the concepts and the theory, but rather to be focused on the method, and to try and find a good balance so that the theory is actually useful to practitioners rather than overwhelming. So it's more like a reference to the key concepts and theory rather than foregrounding that. That's what we're trying.
Yeah. Thanks, Pri. That sounds really interesting and also useful. And this sort of thing that's coming to my mind is the usefulness of endnotes for something like that. Because, in the end note, you can actually, do a more sort of more substantive elaboration on the theory for those that are interested in the theory that sits behind it, because we shouldn't just assume that practitioners also are not going to be interested in the theory so that they can find their way through it, So,
Yes.
Often the end note is the most useful holding zone for where you need to put a little bit more complex stuff, but you don't want it like bothering your first layer of work. So that might also be something you could think of, So you get almost like a multi-layered, kind of paper, but the end notes, of course, can hold, a lot of substance if you develop them carefully. So that could also be a strategy, just to reference out from the way you've done it in the main part of the paper.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I think a
kind of convening.
Yeah, we're seeing the paper as a convening summary so that it very carefully brings the pieces together, and then it'll link to the other papers and it'll link to the practical toolkit so that everything is available and the document is like a coherent summary of everything.
Awesome. And often in papers, depending, I don't know which journal you're going for, but they also often allow you to submit, remember that, what they call it, sort of supporting material. So if you have written a more elaborate essay on the theory or whatever, you could put it there, or your toolkit, you could put it in as supporting material. So it might be interesting to look for a journal that allows that. So in other words, the multi-layered kind of finding your way in and out approach.
We found such a journal. It's called SAGI. So we're taking great advantage of the flexibility, because I don't know if another paper would have allowed us to play in this. Another journal would have allowed us to play in this way.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. There's more and more of them, by the way, that are allowing, more experimental ways. But yeah, no, okay, good. We're looking forward to seeing it in there. I think I mentioned in the email that I sent out last night, we had a lot of really lovely abstracts coming into the SAGI, the 2 special issues, about 30 abstracts or more. So we're in the process of looking through them and just sort of giving authors responses. So people should get their responses within the next few days, I'm hoping. We finished the 1 batch and we're now just moving on to the next batch of the 2 different SIs. Thanks, Bree, for starting us off. Anybody else want to come in to just share with us what they've been doing? Aro?
Okay, thanks, Prof. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm working on 2 papers. So the first one, it's mainly on climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. Then my focus is to see how cases of these strategies can be used to empower environmental education or climate change education. So, right, I have the strategies based on my study. Then now I want to sort of motivate on how locally relevant climate action strategies can empower climate change education. So that link, I think, yes, sometimes when I'm writing, I can see that I can establish the link, but sometimes I find that like the strategies for climate action, they are on their own, then climate change education again is on its own. So I'm trying to find those links and maybe some literature that can easily help me like to uplift this, like how climate action can be localized, mainly using the Lorette framework, like how education for sustainable development can can make use of local cases so that climate change action can be seen as something that is possible, not as an abstract issue. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thanks, Aro. I think that what you're raising here is the issue of the key argument, So what is the key argument? The key argument is that local approaches can contribute to climate change education. So how are you making that argument? Sounds to me like you're asking, is there more literature that can help you to make that argument stronger, so you're not oscillating between the local approaches and the education, but you actually need an educational argument for the local approach. So I think that's a very good example of how we come to make our key arguments. We have this and we have that, and then we see that we need something to stitch it together to strengthen the key argument. So thank you for that reflection. And how far are you with the drafting? Have you got a first draft? Are you with a rough half a first draft? It'd be nice just to also hear where everybody is with their drafts.
I think the draft is almost there because I'm standing at 3,000 words. So it with Sage, I think I can say I have the first draft considering the number of words that I have so far. So it's a matter of trying to make my argument so strong so that I see what to add, what to remove. But
strengthen your argument. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. All right. That sounds good. Anybody else want to share with us where they are on their journey? How's your key argument? What's your main claim? Is it well covered? Do you have enough literature data, do you think? Do you have a clear flow? So these little red questions. Kati, let's hear from you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for this beautiful session.
Morning.
Yes. With me and Prof. Kat, we are writing 2 papers. Like she indicated last time that we are doing the other one for theory with using concentrating on the third space learning. the research that we are doing, it's like we are trying to take out the teaching from the classroom to the outside. So we are using the school food garden. So for the first paper, we are concentrating on the third space theory as a theory. Like, and then for the second paper, we are sharing our findings, we have done with the hood spread schools. So what we are doing there, we are sharing the methodology which we think it will come out, or it's coming out all right, the photo voice, because we used the photo voice where the participants were collecting, were taking pictures, their own pictures, three pictures, and come and present to them how are they using, or what is actually happening in those pictures in terms of repurposing education for sustainable livelihoods. It's like they will present, you will find that there is a picture, the teacher will present what is it that was actually happening. They were sharing the stories with us. So that is part of our methodology. And again, we are using the green pedagogical approaches, because it's not the school garden only that they are using to teach. From our findings, they even have pictures where they are using the local trees there, like marula tree, that this is how we are trying to link the indigenous knowledge to the current curricula. So the main argument is, how can we repurpose education for sustainable livelihoods, that when learners leave the schools, they should be having the skills that when we check most of from the present curriculum, it's not very much clear which skills are they leaving the schools with. So it's around there. I don't know if it's
okay.
It's
so how far are you with both of these now, Kati? Are you nearing in the first draft?
One for
first draft
space theory, it's almost done. Let me say almost done. It's being polished. And then the second one, this part of the research paper. Hey, we have got a lot of information, a lot of findings. So we are trying to stream them to be able to fit in at least 6,000 words, like the journal ones, because it's a lot. Remember, we're just taking it from the bigger research paper, trying to trim it down, concentrating on one school only. But even from that one school, we've got a lot of data that we can share. So that is what we are trying to reduce. Yeah. But the draft is almost done also. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
And some useful strategies for data reduction can often be, using tables or using, sort of clustering of things. I'm sure you're already busy with that kind of a strategy. And using illustrative cases, but then reference to the other data, so I think one needs to develop different strategies, especially with qualitative research, because sometimes one does get a lot of data. So you have to be quite careful of pulling it together carefully without leaving a lot out. It's a trick, isn't it?
It's true.
So yeah, graphics, tables, these are the strategies that people do use. Sometimes images can also help.
So, yes, because we remember our methodology is all about images. I think that can also help us.
Yeah, so an illustrative image, which you just elaborate with further data, can help to, synthesize a key point very quickly, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah, so maybe see how that works. But yes, I know that's often a challenge, especially when you're working to word limits. Yeah. Okay, let's hear from somebody else. Wilma, how are you feeling today? Wilma, I've heard from Lawrence that you've been very sick again with COVID, third time around.
Yes, Heila, I'm all right, thank you. I'm just
Yeah.
sort of listening to what everybody is saying and take some notes. So we are also, but
Okay, so
at
just
the
have a
moment,
quiet session then.
we are also just with our analysis at the moment, busy with our learning network article, and we've done some interviews, and we're also doing analysis using the NetMap tool at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that kind of tool is often very helpful also to bring a lot of data together in a visual, form. So very, very useful. Okay, so Vilma, we'll just leave you quietly there and I hope you feel better soon. Who else would like to come in? Zintle, how is your sound from Namibia? Sometimes I know you have a problem with sound. Zintle, no, not coming in. Colleen, how's your paper going?
Hi, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thanks for this. I've found it to be a very interesting process, but the Pomodoro writing idea has really been very helpful and valuable. So my paper is focused to one key finding from my master's study, and I've positioned it as one of a series of papers. But I'm struggling to separate this key finding as a standalone because the study findings were so interconnected. So I'm about 75% there towards the first draft. I'm still well within my word limits. I'm at about 2,500 words. But I'm just trying to focus on that golden thread. But another possible challenge is that I'm not sure as a contextualization, do I use the studies contextualization or do I use the actual findings as a contextualization to focus this one paper? So this is just the interesting challenges that I'm grappling with. Thanks, Prof.
Yes. It sounds a little bit like yours, Colleen, could also do with a couple of graphics, where you show the fullness of the findings, but then you just indicate how you're just pulling out this particular one for discussion, and then you reference the fullness of the findings to the thesis. So you could use that kind of a strategy so that it's clear that they're there, but that you're only focusing in this with this one for the purpose of the paper.
Okay.
That kind of an approach can help as well.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks.
So you could draw something like that would help. And then probably you'd need a bit of a mix of the sort of general context of the study and then, pull to the surface the contextual dynamics that are relevant to the focus of the paper.
Okay.
So a little bit of a little bit of both. Yeah. And it's the trick of backgrounding and foregrounding that I think Priya also raised when she was talking about her paper, what do you want to foreground and what needs to be a little bit more backgrounded, and then how do you represent that? And how do you, cope with that within the word limit? It's always a challenge. Yeah. It sounds like you're also making good progress there. Juliana, do you want to come in and share with us where you are? And then we've still got Shireen, I think, and Zintle if she wants to come in.
Hi, good morning, Prof. Good morning, everyone. I'm afraid I don't have much to can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah.
Good morning, Prof. Yeah. I'm afraid I haven't gone much because even in my process, I was still just writing my research proposal and working on it, trying to see if it's accepted. And so I was trying to see how I'll be able to tap into it when I get to that stage. So I'm yet to go for my data collection. So I'm not as advanced as my colleagues, but I thought the process would be very useful for me because it tips and the ends of going ahead. So I'm looking at the perceptions around single motherhood in the context of women empowerment. And as of yesterday, I've
so you've been
just
working
been
towards your
approved
proposal.
to do my. Yeah.
Oh, good. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Every milestone is an important milestone. Eh? Okay, great. Let's hear quickly from anybody else. Previn and Claire, who'd still like to come in before we
Good
move
morning,
on.
everybody.
Shireen, you also there, I see.
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Morning, Claire.
I don't even. Okay.
Yes, we can hear
you. It's the first time I'm actually writing a paper of this nature because what I'm doing is I'm reflecting basically on my practice of integrating ESD in the curriculum studies module in the PGCE program. So basically it's about my practice, what I did, how I did it, why I did it. So at the moment, what I'm grappling with is working with the literature that actually informed the process I used in terms of how I integrated ESD. So I'm doing a bit of literature reading to sort of strengthen my claims in terms of saying the reason I did this is because of, and these are the outcomes that I was looking for. But what will be limiting, or what is the limitation in my study at the moment is that since I did not request for ethical clearance for the study, I'm unable now to use students' reflections or students' work in terms of how I'm writing this. So basically it would be about what I did and why I did it. So I think that's where I'm at the moment. So yeah, let me stop there for now. I think it will need to be another paper now to reflect on how students actually experience it and what they said from their own perspective when I run it again in 2024. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So it's like a narrative reflection, basically.
Yes.
Paper on practice.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. How are you theorizing it, Cynthia?
At the moment, I was working with because that's what.
How are you sort of?
I was drawing from a significant learning in terms of how I set it up. So that's what I'm working with at the moment. Yeah, but I'm still reading. Looking at other pedagogies. Yes, that I'm working with, that I sort of like used, but not necessarily extensively, because the main one was basically the significant learning.
Okay, awesome. That will be very interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. And then, of course, to see a second version or a next edition, as they say, when you bring the actual practical data in. Yeah. Colleen, yes. Your hand is up. Thanks, and Claire. Nice to hear what you're busy with. Colleen?
Thanks, Prof. I wanted to ask a question. In my study, the participants waived their anonymity. Does that extend for papers that I write about in the study, or do I need to again ask them if I can have their permission for paper?
No, if in your ethics tools you indicated to them that you would also be developing papers from the research, then you don't have to ask again. So you should be fine. You should be covered, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, right. Shall we hear quickly from Shireen, Previn, and anybody else who'd still like to just pop in and tell us where they are and how they draft and their argument and their claiming and they're flowing, and everything else is going. Shireen?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I struggled to find the link to the session, so I joined a little late. But Priya and I are writing a paper together, and I'm sure that she's probably filled you in on the progress that we've made. And okay, so basically what was brought up before about representing our paper without going over the word counts was really relevant for us, and we changed the structure of the paper, which is earmarked to be submitted to the ESA journal, one of the special editions on sustainable communities and so on. But now we're using graphics and tables to try and get the balance between the foregrounding and the backgrounding just correct. So we kind of, we changed course midway in this last month to accommodate streamlining, that fine dance that you have to do, so that we could focus on our one idea, which is about using the geostory methodology specifically as a justice enabling multimodal methodology. So we're trying to streamline our one idea so that it comes through really clearly while still giving an inkling to the detail that sits behind that, and the work that Priya did in her thesis as a foundational piece for what we've been doing in our research project. So it's a little complicated, but we are moving forward.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting process that you're working through. And I'm looking forward to seeing the paper coming through. One of the things I mentioned to Priya also was, the multi-layeredness that you can present in papers these days, because you can provide supporting material. You can also use strategies like endnotes and so on that can carry particular things which you don't want to carry in the main text. So you can play around with different options,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the backgrounding job that is always difficult when one gets to, this point of kind of trying to actually write a paper. Then you decide you can include this, exclude that, bound here, frame there, focus this, but ultimately it's related to this point about, your main claim, your key argument, and what the purpose of the paper is, who you're writing it for, so the type of paper. So all those things come together, as you can see from everybody's discussions now. Okay, there's Previn left. Previn, do you want to give us a quick update? Cool. And otherwise we can move on.
Yes. Great. Thanks. I managed to get into the load shedding. So I've been working on this ecological literacy paper, and I'm still working with the literature. So I've got quite a few pages left. My dilemma is, I'm saying I've got quite a few pages down. My dilemma is that I'm wondering, since this is also part of the chapter which I'm writing for my PhD thesis, can one submit a paper that's part of the study, or once I submit and publish it, can I still use some of that paper for my chapter?
Yes, you can, if you put it in the appendix, Previn. And you just indicate that you wrote the paper, while you were working on the chapter, and that they are the same work. So you can just put that in the appendix, and you can include it in your write-up of how you produced the thesis. So in Ruben's case, for example, we worked on a paper which was a paper that we used to, what I would call, often clear the ground, to clear the ground for the methodology or the approach or the analysis or something. Often in PhDs, you need those kind of papers. They help you to clear the ground, and then you can come back into the work. I think, Priya, you wrote one like that early on, or when you wrote into that book, that cleared the ground for you, and you could then elaborate into that more complex system of understanding knowledges in citizen science. So they're often extremely helpful. And then you just put them in the appendix, and then you make sure that the readers know that it was part of the PhD. It's not something that was done before the PhD. It was done during the PhD, and therefore it's part of it. So yeah, easy to manage that kind of a demo program.
I just worried about
It's
that. Yeah.
often
So,
very
and
helpful
then
because it helps you to focus your ideas, you know. That's what a paper often does, which is more difficult in a chapter. And
yeah.
I know in your case, you've been working, you know, in and out of, you know, focus and then breadth and then breadth and focus and then
Yes.
yes.
That'll be nice to get a focused, tight paper
Yes.
in that. Okay,
Yes.
great. Quite going on, and hoping to finalize it. So it's a knowledge synthesis paper at the
Yes.
moment.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so I think I'm going to move on. It sounds like everybody is making, you know, their various forms of progress, and you can see also that it is various forms of progress, and it's not one thing, and it's not one way to get to your first draft. So it takes a lot of this deliberative work, you know, with your data, with the theory, with your argument, with what you intended, with your audience. It takes all of those things as we begin to actually put the paper in place and do that writing and rewriting. That's why we say it's not just writing, it's writing and rewriting. It's writing and rewriting, it's writing and rewriting, it's writing and rewriting until you feel happy with what it is that you have there as a first draft. Normally, the first draft is such a good space to get to, because then you kind of feel like you can breathe and you've got it all there. And after that, you can then begin to clean up. So that's why I was wanting you to try to work towards a first draft before the session. But as long as everybody's got at least part of that first draft in place, we can then, you know, continue with working on towards what needs to be done now towards submission. So I'm going to move on now. And of course, the one thing that one needs to do is you need to revisit your idea of the readers, as Priya and Shireen were also telling us. And you have to be able to check yourself that you are writing for your readers. You're not just writing and writing and writing and writing. And it often helps you also to what you call fine-tune the first draft. So who is going to read that paper? Remember when we started with 3 people that we had in mind. You know? So what I wanted us to do now is to go back to those 3 people that you had in mind. Think of your readers again and ask yourself this question: will your readers follow you? Okay. So what I thought we could do is we could go into little groups of 3, and I'm very happy Previn managed to join us, or if Colleen can help as well, to just put us into breakout groups of 3. And then I thought that what would be useful is if you could just read the title of your piece to your 2 fellow writers. Tell them who you had in mind as your readers. So, you know, go back to your 3 readers, okay? And then read 1 or 2 paragraphs of your work to them. You don't need to read the whole piece. You can just choose a piece, 1 paragraph maybe of what you've written. You might just have to tell your fellow writers, you know, which part of your paper are you going to read? Are you reading the introduction, or are you reading the synthesis, or are you reading this sort of initial findings, or are you reading the methodology? So you want to just tell them what you're going to read to them, then read it to them and literally read it. Okay, so read it so that they can hear you, and then check if they are getting what you are writing, and if they feel sort of comfortable with what you're writing and who you're writing for, and have a little conversation about that, okay? The reading of the work and the listening to the work and the making sense of the work, because ultimately that's what happens when a paper is written. It's written for people. People need to be able to read it. They need to be able to make sense of it. So that's what I wanted us to do now, spend a little bit of time. I'm going to give you maybe 20 minutes should be enough, I think, for each person to just read at least a paragraph and your title, a little bit of your work, and then just let others give you any feedback that comes to mind. Okay. And remember that this is giving each other support. And I loved this particular quote. It said, reading is an exercise in empathy. It's an exercise in walking in someone else's shoes for a little while. So as you read, there's this relationship between the reader and the writer. And I wanted us just to spend a little bit of time thinking about that now, because that is also extremely helpful in this finalizing phase. If you go back to your thinking about your reader, just read aloud so that somebody can hear what you're writing, okay? Get a little bit of feedback and then come back. Okay, so Previn, if you don't mind breaking us into little groups of 3, and we can then at least read a paragraph to each other of our work. Okay, you happy with that? Previn, are you okay with doing that? Is Previn still there? Yes? Okay.
Prof, I know Prev's been struggling with load shedding, so
Right. And you do it, Collins.
Sure.
Just break us into... Okay, Wilma's going to jump out for the exercise. Wilma, you can just sit and listen if you want to in your group. You don't have to read. Looks like Previn has got us into groups.
Okay, I think we're in a group already, Prof. Shireen, I think it's the 3 of us. It was an automatic process and somehow you and I ended up together.
Okay, cool. So,
Shireen, can you hear us?
Shireen's dropped off. So it's you and me, Colleen.
Okay. Do you want to go first then, Prof?
You. I have to find a piece. Maybe you go first while I find a piece because I'm a bit scattered here.
Okay. No problem. So the title is A Whole Systems Perspective as a Key Enabler in Regenerative Sustainability Activities, Learnings from a Master's in Education Study. In my paragraph starts, this paper is based on learnings from a Master's in Education Study. It is the first of a series of papers that speak to the study findings. This paper provides the opening for the series and contains an overview and contextualization that will be a launch pad for the subsequent weeks. Themes emerged across the majority of the themes emerged across the study, and this is where the series of papers launches. This paper explores the theme, a whole system perspective. It considers that actions have consequences and some unintended consequences arise when looking through a singularly focused lens. A whole systems perspective can help bring into view the landscape and the interconnectedness of a singular focus and the possible impact that influencing change to that singular focus might result, whether positive, neutral, or negative.
That's sounding very nice, Colleen. Who is your main, who did you have in mind for your readers?
So initially, Prof, it was Prof Urita, Prof Dave Suri, and Mr. Kamlesh Riga. But when you asked us to think back in terms of who our readers would be, I haven't been writing for them.
Okay, so who have you been writing for? Would you?
I think I've been writing for people who are interested in this field of sustainability.
Sustainability practices and how to strengthen them. To the student groups in the university, would they be a better audience?
I think they could be, Prof, but I think it would be the journal readers, a sustainability journal reader.
Yeah, so it's somebody who wants to develop sustainability in higher education, is it? Or is it more general?
It's more general. So, Prof, that's what's been so tricky is that the study had multiple focuses or multiple findings, and the one key one was creating a social learning space within universities, because universities just hold so much potential for us to be open with these kind of conversations. But the themes that emerged speak to a wider group. And that was one of the areas that the examiners came back to say, okay, so you've got these themes, but now what? And in answering the examiners, we had said we will be we will be looking at the themes in terms of new studies and taking the study forward rather than answering it within that study. So the themes that emerged across the majority of the embedded study projects was a convergence of socio and eco, the whole systems perspective, the importance of and honoring the social commons, problem solving for system change. Some of them seem obvious, but they're obvious when you actually say them. So that's where I was going with this series of papers.
Okay, but the data that you're working with is the university data, the social learning space in the university's environment, or?
So the data that I'm using is so the embedded projects were within the Rhodes University campus space. But the data is from the projects themselves and their projects learnings.
Yes, but they're university projects, right?
Yes and no. So they originate from the university and the different stakeholders within the university. So 2 are from PhD scholars. 1 we used was the Food for Us, which was under your project. I interviewed Sarah. Yeah. Then it was the environmental counselors. I interviewed them as a project.
Yeah.
And then it was the CSD, their repurposing recyclables for teacher training aids. Okay. So it's very, very interesting.
So it's a range of sustainability projects then.
Yes, that originated from stakeholders within the Rhodes University campus. But each of them and how they were able to move and navigate within the university systems depended on the role they actually held within the university system. So where you've got your PhD scholars, they struggled more because their role within that project wasn't as legitimized as a project that was actually based within a center of the university. Yes. So, and then it also got to a point where it was looking at how enabling systems are invisible when the system is enabling. But it becomes very visible when it's not an enabling system.
Right. So that's interesting finding.
So many different findings that were so extremely different, but also linked, that were totally interconnected. So
yes. It reminds me of the work of Vanessa Akbedahin, where she identified the position practice systems of different people in the university and how that allowed them to do, a certain amount of work because of the position practice system that was held in the bigger system. You know what I mean?
Yes, very much so. Like, as an example, we also interviewed the hall warden of the Stanley Kid, and he was saying how it was about the Venga trainer, but you'd actually see how coming in and making the system work and marrying into an existing culture of recycling within that one house, how the activity, in his words, exploded to the point that they couldn't cope with the supports to the activity, which was interesting compared to the other projects who couldn't move forward because they didn't have that enabling space, system that supported what their culture, or the project. It's very interesting, Prof. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Wow.
How to pull one thing out.
Yes. Well, I think for me, it sounds like, to tell at least 1 or 2 of those stories. Are you doing that with your data? And then, so you're illuminating the key point from those 1 or 2 stories.
In my walk into work this morning, I'd actually had that idea, but up until yesterday, I had not been doing that, Prof.
Yes, it sounds to me like that would be very nice to do, so you kind of say, this is the study, this was its scope, this is the boundary for the paper, and then these are the stories, and then this is the significance in relation to this particular key finding. So the stories that best show up that issue of the systems approach, those would be the ones to work with. And then the others you can keep for other papers,
Yes.
if they show up other things more. That sounds like that would work really nicely. Okay, that sounds nice, Colleen.
I feel quite selfish. I've hogged your time.
No, I can read a piece to you. I actually am just got so many things on the go, but I'll read this little piece to you from, I'm writing a T-learning paper. I'm not sure where to put it yet, but so I'll just read it. It's so a concept emerging as key to the work of diverse T-learning networks is co-defining matters of concern, or that emerged for the T-learning networks is co-defining matters of concern, which is a focus of in the T-learning process. So the concept speaks directly to an understanding that making transformations to sustainability is highly complex, and a variety of views and realities need to be taken into account in working towards change. We took our guidance for this concept from Bruno Latour, who proposed that matters of concern as an alternative to matters of fact. The dangers of working with matters of fact is that they are political renderings of matters of concern, and therefore present an uneven power relation between the fact definers and those from whom the facts were drawn. Matters of concern couples facts and values. It acknowledges that there are material realities which need to be changed. For example, there are mine-polluted rivers which are poisoning people who live downstream. But at the same time, there are values which bring to light root causes of the facts, the differential impacts, and importantly, the agencies available to engage with how those matters are dealt with. In co-defining the matters of concern, there is an explicit aim to enable a democratic relation around the defining of a problem and acting to change it. So that's just a little paragraph on one particular feature of the T-learning process.
Profit's highly higher grade. It sounds very interesting.
Too higher grade for the readers. For the
matters of concern versus matters of fact. It was very, very interesting, and how you're motivating for that democratic relationship shift.
Yes, because the matters of concern in the literature, the way Bruno Latour is, it's fact and value. It's not just fact. Because if you only use fact, you exclude values. So that's why it's not just matters of fact, it's matters of concern. And then you open it up for people to come in and engage with it. Otherwise, it's only the fact producers. That's what I'm trying to explain.
It's one way, and not honoring
everybody's
actually living in that space.
Yes, yeah. So he has a more complex version of it too, which is that it's also the world around us, which is also part of the matters of concern. But how it was picked up in T-learning was more around the facts and values and the relationships in the context around the matter of concern, and then the importance of co-defining those matters of concern. It's not for the researcher to predetermine them, but then to come that needs to be done together. That sort of a process.
Sounds very interesting, Prof. Are your the TESF projects you created a publication, Stories of Change. It just feels like it would be so valuable to do something similar for the TESF project across all the projects that were run.
Yes, probably for the T-learning. I'm actually thinking of a book or a handbook to capture them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many now, you know, so many people that have made these different stories around these processes of co-defining matters of concern in the T-learning and then the TESF work, what that means for transforming education for sustainable futures.
Because the co-defining of the matters of concern, if there was a way to reference it to the actual the vast the gambit of the TESF project, it just makes it even more special.
Yes.
There's so many different stakeholders and everybody played different roles.
That's right. Yeah.
You're capturing the voices of everyone.
Yeah, so that's why I think it is actually needs to be a book.
It's very powerful, that, Prof.
Yeah. So it probably needs, you know, a bit of more work around getting it into a book. I've sort of got it more or less there. I've been trying to write the front parts of a book like that, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yes.
So is that a project in your sabbatical?
Yes, it is when I get to the sabbatical. It's one of my ongoing projects that I never have enough time for. But I'm hopeful. Yeah. So just to come back to yours then, Colleen. So it would be very cool for you, once you've written, I think, to write the stories. The 2 stories, if you can choose, can you choose 2 stories that would nicely illuminate the systems argument?
Yes, I definitely can. I definitely can, Prof.
And there's this nice strategy called vignettes.
I heard Priya say that, Priya say that word, but I didn't understand. Vignettes.
So vignette is like a little story. So you can put them into 2 boxes in your paper. So you write vignette 1 and vignette 2. So they're like little illustrated stories. And then you can do the, you know, elaboration on that. Because they then help the readers to kind of like feel the data, you know, feel the actual project.
Sure, Prof. So it's so interesting because I actually had an artist illustrate 4 of the projects and I added that to the study.
Oh,
just
nice.
In a poster.
Yeah, so you can put that in.
Very well received. Okay.
Yes. So why don't you put that in then with the little vignettes?
Okay.
So they're like summaries. So I'm trying to think of somebody who used vignettes really nicely in a Saji paper.
Vignettes. How would you spell that, Prof? V-I-N-Y-E-T?
It's V-I-G-N-E-T-T-E-S. Vignettes.
V-I-N-E-T-T-E-S. Okay, thanks.
I'll try and think of somebody who's used vignettes in a Saji paper. You know, you could actually just go onto the AJOL website and under search, just put in the word vignette, V-I-G-N-E-T-T-E-S.
Okay.
And I'm sure a couple of papers will show up that are using vignettes, and then you'll see how people are doing that. I think Titch used, I can't remember now, my mind is a bit full these days, but I think Titch is one who used vignettes, if I remember correctly.
I'll go take a look, Prof. Thanks.
But it's a strategy often that is used in qualitative research, especially when you've got a lot and then you want to just tell the story, but in a sort of very tight way, you know, so that it is there, but so that might be also very useful for you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. I'll do that. I've noticed that Prev's in our room. Prev, do you want to go?
I was thinking.
Yes, sorry, Colin. I got kicked. I lost the connection to room 1 again. Can you send me back in?
Oh, so you can room 1.
And then I think that we can let people know that we'll come. I think we've been in here for quite long now, haven't we?
Yeah, for 20 minutes.
Yeah, so I think let's bring everybody back in a minute or so. How do we do that? I'm not very good at making breakdown groups.
You got it, Colleen?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
60 seconds. Perfect.
All right. I
Thanks.
think let's do that. Just bring people back. So I've still got quite a lot to cover. That was a nice chat. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Prof. Appreciate it.
You've made me think again about that book that I know it's just like needs to be done.
It's a very nice problem to have, Prof.
I've got about 3 of those. I think I need to go and sit in my bird hide and write.
Okay, I don't know if we're in the main room or if we're still in a breakout.
I think we are in the main room. Are we present? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, we're in the main room. Yes,
So
everyone's
everybody
around.
else will come back in. Okay, they're coming back in now. Right, welcome back to the big room, everybody. I hope that the little process activity was helpful to you. I don't know if anybody wants just a quick reflection on it from each of the groups. Maybe just one person can share back what happened for them in the group. So we only had 3 little groups, so it shouldn't take us long.
Thank you, Kathy here.
Yes, Kati, go.
Hey, the group to me was helpful because when I was reading, my colleagues managed to give me feedback and guiding my writing and my approach in my introduction. And now she was still giving me feedback on my methodology.
Wow, okay.
It was helpful, in fact.
Great. That's good.
And I've also learned something from the infographics that Priya presented. So
Right.
and it was so interesting.
Okay.
So she even shared the link with me so that I can get more information from her thesis. Because I once did an assignment with UP in 2021 we're using infographics.
Yes.
But it's like it was the last time for me to to use that.
Yes, and they're very powerful for representing ideas very tightly. I was talking to Colleen also about a strategy called Vignette, which is a little short story that you condense your data into a short story in a paper. Different strategies for data reduction, condensing material, and not lose ethics of it.
I've seen that.
Great. Okay, thank you, Kati. Somebody from another group?
Okay, thanks, Prof. So I was with Juliana. So yes, she really critiqued my work, and I'm happy on the feedback that I got. Like, she was emphasizing that the issue of claim, I have to make it more clear. So yeah, it was nice, and we were cut while we were still discussing things.
Okay, so you see, it's very helpful to get a writing buddy and to be reading to each other and getting people to give you feedback.
Yes,
and sometimes one of the nicest ways is to just read your work aloud to them, because then they have to, they're sitting and they're listening carefully and they're hearing what you're saying, and then they can come into a conversation with you quite quickly. So as soon as you feel like you need feedback, just do that, read your work to somebody else.
Yes,
I have many colleagues on this platform. You can contact them, you can write to them, you can also contact Gamu. She's been hosting Friday morning sessions for people who want a little bit of feedback on their work. So invite feedback. It's so helpful. So that's the point,
Yes, thanks.
Any other group that we haven't heard back from yet? Okay, let's move on a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the next part of our work. So far we've looked at our drafting, and we've raised the question of needing to stay focused, have the claim clear, as Ara was just saying, you know, be able to represent your data in different kinds of ways so that you get the essence of it there, and that you don't have to, you know, put everything in, but that you don't leave things behind. So those strategies, using infographics, using vignettes, clustering data, all of those different strategies one has to use when you get going. Then we've talked about remembering your readers. And when I was talking to Colleen, she said she originally had these readers in mind. And as she's been writing, she's actually changed the readership. She's got other readers in mind now. So you can do that, okay? And it's fine. The most important thing is that you then have those new readers in mind again, Colleen. So as you go forward now, put 3 new readers in mind, whoever those will be, you know, so that you constantly keep your readers in mind, because when you keep your readers in mind, you're writing for others, you're not writing for yourself. And that's very, very important, because writing is not something just for you. Writing is to share your work into the world with other people. So therefore, it's very important for you to always put yourself in this reading-writing relationship, you know, so that the reader, you can see here, reading is an exercise in empathy, an exercise in walking in someone else's shoes for a while. So you want your readers to be walking in your shoes. You want them to be seeing what it is that you want to share with the world. So always think about your readers. Don't just think about yourself. It's very difficult, I know, especially when you get into the difficult part of the writing. Sometimes we forget our readers because we're struggling so much with the writing. But it's always a relational process, reading and writing, reading and writing. You write so that others can read. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it, you see. And therefore, you must think about your reader. So this little exercise of just reading to other people, getting some feedback, supportive engagement around your work, you know, keep doing it until you get to the point where you're feeling really strong about your work. So what I want to do now is I want to work now towards submission. You can see here's the green tick. The green tick is when we're ready to submit. So it takes a bit of process to get to the point of submission of a paper. Once we've got the first draft, we need to do a number of things to feel confident that we're ready for submission. So one is that our introduction and our context needs to be clearly described. Some of you have been discussing that with each other and also been discussing it in our feedback so far this morning. Secondly, your research question must be clear. It must be clear what it is that you're addressing in the paper, because otherwise the reader doesn't know what the paper is about. So try to have a very clear research question articulated. Your methods must be clearly described, and we've had discussion about that as well. I think, Kati, you were saying you were getting feedback on your methods. So describe your methods very clearly. And in a paper, it's quite difficult because, you know, in a thesis, you have quite a number of pages to describe your methodology. In a paper, you have 1 or 2 paragraphs. So you have to be very concise about your methods. It must be very clear to people what you did and how you did it. And that needs to be, you know, tight and focused in your paper. So methods must be clearly described. Your literature review should be in place with your concept well explained and the research gap also well articulated. So Aro talked earlier about doing work on the Lorette methodology, but, you know, have you explained the Lorette methodology through the literature? Do people know what the Lorette methodology is? Do the people know why it's significant? Why are you bringing it into climate change education? How it relates to the local relevance of the practices that you're wanting to foreground, and what that means for climate change education? What's the educational argument in and for Lorette methodology, you see? So that's the work that you do in your literature review, is it brings the key concepts well explained, linked into the field, so that people understand what it is that you're bringing into the paper. What else has been said about it? Who else has done research on Lorette methodology? Do we know? Have you found that yet, Aro? You know, those are the kinds of things you can ask yourself in this particular part of the paper, because it sounded to me like that's where you still, you know, working things up a bit. Kati was talking about green pedagogy. I think last time she told us they did a lot of literature review around green pedagogy so that they can make that concept clearer to us. Wilma is working on learning networks, you know, doing the research in the background. We know who's written about learning networks, what do we know about learning networks already, and therefore what is the contribution of this paper? What is the concept of learning network? See, so that kind of a thing needs to be done. Also, then your argument and the main claim needs to be clear. Your argument for the main claim needs to be clear, and you need the evidence provided for the claims. And of course, remember last time we talked about its claim, evidence, claim, evidence, claim, evidence. So it's the claim, but there's sub-claims that are supported with evidence as you go along. So claim, evidence, claim, evidence. So Colleen was making a claim that a systems-based approach is very significant for regenerative sustainability. And then we talked about, okay, the evidence then for that will come from the projects that she was working on. And she can represent 2 or 3 of the projects through vignettes. But she said then she also has a really nice graphic which captures the essence of the project. So she can provide that also as part of the evidence for the claim. You see, so evidence, claim, evidence, claim. Then after that, to be happy that your findings have been discussed. So you've come up with your main claim and that you then discuss that. You consolidate it, and remember when we were writing our abstracts to tell us what it means in theory and what it means or what it means in practice. So in Priya's case, it sounds like Priya and Shireen, they're developing a methodology paper for practitioners. So they're clearly aiming for a meaning of their work in practice. So it will be nice to really get a good summary of that in the discussion. So why is this methodology significant for practice? See, so you're aiming in that direction, I think. And then, of course, you need a conclusion which wraps things up, and it then also needs to indicate the limitations of the research and what still needs to be done. So in Zintle's case, she was telling us that she's working on a reflective narrative about how she used significant learning to frame the way that she teaches ESD in the PGCE, but that she hasn't actually got data from the students. So what she would do then is she'd wrap up her paper and say, you know, this is one of the limitations of this particular research project is that it doesn't have data from the students, but that this will be developed in the next paper or in further research. You see, so then she signals very clearly that she knows she doesn't have data from the students in this paper. That's not the purpose of the paper. The purpose of the paper is to share the approach and the method that she developed around her thinking of significant learning. And then she still needs to do work now to get more material from the students after using this approach with the PGCEs in a second round, okay, which is what she's planning to do. Then the reviewers are not going to say to her, where is the data from the students, you see, because she has indicated very clearly that she's not using data from the students in this paper, you see, and she's indicated that is still to come. It's coming next. In Colleen's case, she wants to focus on one particular thing, but she knows there's a whole lot of other factors. So she would, in the end of her paper, say, this paper focused only on one of these factors. All of these other factors also need to be discussed in further detail, and this will come in future papers or further research, and it has been discussed in the thesis, you see. So you signal very clearly what you do and what you don't do. In Priya and Shireen's case, they've decided to foreground the practice-centered approach to the paper. They know that there's a whole layer of complex theory behind it that can be done in another paper, or it has already been done in the thesis, you see. So that's the kind of thing that you need to do, signaling what you have and what's still to come. So when you've done all of those things and you feel happy with them, then you are ready to do the last set of work, okay, which is the cleaning up. So what I've done in this PowerPoint, you can see the little green tick. I will give it to you. It's also on the mirror board, but everybody will get this PowerPoint, and you can use it to do your own reflections. You see, you can then say, okay, my introduction and context, I think now is clearly described. I think my research question is clear. My methods, I think, are clearly described. I have covered literature review. My concepts are well explained. The research gap is clear for the reader. My argument and my main claim is clear. I've provided evidence for my claims, okay, to back up my argument and my claim. You remember from last time this, okay, the strong claim arrow, you'll remember? Strong claim with strong evidence, weak claim with no evidence. See, strong claim with strong evidence, hold up the claim with evidence. If there's not enough evidence, the claim is likely to shuffle and fall. That you've then discussed your evidence, okay, in relation to the question that you're asking and what the research means. If you're happy with that, tick it off. If you've got a conclusion that indicates the limitations of your research and what still needs to be done, you can tick it off. When you've ticked all of that off, when you've got the green light, you're giving yourself the green light, then you go into finishing up. Okay, so don't do finishing up until you've done that. And by finishing up, I mean the sort of technical finishing up. So I think that what we can do now is we can take a little break. I think we're around about halfway through our session. Let's take a 10-minute break. And then after the 10-minute break, we'll come back and then I'll take you into the technical sides of finishing off, and we'll do some exercises. We'll start with the title and keywords because that's a very important thing to finish up extremely well. So we'll start with that, and then we'll move into cleaning up your own language. So proofreading, we'll move into that, and then some strategies for you to start with there, and then we'll also look at referencing, and then we'll look at submission. Okay, so for the last 1.5 hours, we'll look then at the cleanup stage of a paper, so that when you've done your green light and you're happy with your draft and you've got the words right, number of words right, and so on, then you can do the cleanups in your paper. So then I'm going to just show you, these are the cleanup work that we can do as we move in that direction. Okay, so let's take a short break. I don't know, Previn, if you're back where you can play music, but otherwise
yes.
we'll just put
yes,
it on. Oh, thank you so much. Then Previn can play some music for us. When the music stops, we'll come back. So we are now at, what's the time now? I can't even see. What's the time? Colleen, what's the time now?
Prof, it's almost 25 past 10.
Okay, so let's come back at 10:35. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all there and ready for the next part. This is like our final little part of this online course. Let me find it. And here it is. And it is these things. Right. Are we all ready? Is everybody back? And just put your thumbs up if you are, so that I can just check that I'm not speaking to the void. Okay, Kati and Previn are there, Shireen and Zintle, and a couple of others. Okay, cool. At least I know I'm not speaking to a void. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take us through some of the dimensions of the refinement and cleaning up process. Now, you'll remember right at the beginning of the course, one of the things that we said was that you worry about the cleaning up at the end. Okay, so often when we do writing, we try to do everything perfectly before we've even written it. But in fact, with this kind of writing, you don't have to. You just do it so that the most important thing is to get your argument and the substance in place, and then you clean up. Okay, so now we've got our argument and our substance in place. We've done our green check. We're happy that we're ready, just about ready to submit. And then you have to clean up, because you can't submit a paper that hasn't been cleaned up. So the cleanup process involves a number of things, and that's what I'm going to take us through now. Starting with cleaning up on your title and making sure that you have very good keywords. So the reason why this is important, just as important as it is to have a very good abstract, is because this is what people are searching for, and a title must have the essence of what your paper is about. And most often, one can't clean up your title until right at the end. So, and the key principle with a good title is short and clear. So you really want a short and clear title, and you want 5 good keywords to go with your title. So what I'm going to do now is give us a little chat challenge. So I'm going to ask you all to give us an alternative for this very lengthy, over-elaborate, alienating title, and I have to own it because I actually put it on as a title on one paper that I wrote a few years ago. And when I looked at it this morning, I thought, oh my word, that could probably be one of the worst titles in the world. So the title that we have to now improve between us is, it says here, the social and learning in social learning research, avoiding ontological collapse with antecedent literatures as starting points for research. Can you imagine such a simple title? And what the paper was about actually was that what I'd observed is that in social learning research, people forget to write about the processes of the social processes and the learning processes, and then they turn social learning into an object, and the process disappears, and then you get what I called then was an ontological collapse. In other words, you lose the actual situated processes that are both social and learning when one is writing about social learning research or describing social learning research. So you turn it into an object and you lose the process. And then, unfortunately, I made such a long, horrible title for this paper with antecedent literatures. So what I was doing there was I was surfacing the social and the learning literatures to say we must have a process, we must not forget a process orientation when we write about social learning. So that was the paper, what the paper was trying to do, and just look at this terrible title. So here's the challenge, okay? I'm asking you to rewrite this challenge, this title, short and clear. And please, as you get to do it, pop it in the chat, and we'll just see who comes up with a much better title than the one I had for that paper. So I'm going to give you a countdown, 1, 2, 3, and we'll just see who can come up with a better title. As fast as you can, pop it into the chat. 1, 2, 3, go. Title challenge number 1. There we go. Colleen's got hers in. Anybody else? Revan's got his in. Anybody else? Come on, guys. We need a couple more. Shireen's coming in. Keeping social and learning processes visible. Yeah. Can we have one or two more? And then we can look at them and we can decide which one is best. Pauline likes Shireen's one. Any more? Priya's got one. Revan's got another one. Okay, let's work with the ones that we've got here now. So which of these do you think captures the essence of the paper? Gives the best message for that paper that I was talking about? You can unmute and tell us what you think. Pati's also put one in. Pauline says, wow, I love Shireen's. I think Priya's is spot on. We're getting some voting going here. The social and the learning, the doing is important. That's Priya's one. Shireen's one. Let's read them all. Colleen's one, a process-orientated focus for social learning. Preven, social and learning, avoiding ontological collapse. Shireen, keeping social and learning processes visible in social learning research. Priya's one, the social and the learning, the doing is important. Preven's next one, social learning pitfalls, avoiding ontological collapse when starting our research. Kati, starting points for social learning research. Colleen, while I love Shireen's, I think Priya's is spot on. Okay, being the author of the paper, right, I think that I would vote for Shireen's one. Because what she's done here, she said, keeping social and learning processes visible in social learning research. So by doing that, you're avoiding the ontological collapse that I was writing about. But I'm not using the big word, right, in the title. Preven's one, it's got the big word in the title, social and learning, avoiding ontological, that also captures very specifically and much more succinctly. Which one? Priya's one moves towards doing, but it wasn't really about doing the paper. It was more about social processes and learning processes. So adding the doing is another element that wasn't actually in the paper. Anybody else want to come in with a comment? And then with the ones that say starting points, it wasn't really about, yeah, starting points for research, social starting points for social learning process. It's starting points for social learning research processes, but it was the ontological processes that were the starting points. Shireen says, keep the big words out. Readers will be stumped. Yeah, I think Priya is correct here. Shireen's version too, the word visible is key. And I totally agree, because that was the point that I was trying to write about, was that when people are writing about social learning, they turn it into an object. And then as you turn it into a thing, you lose the process. So that was what the paper was all about. So I think I would vote for Shireen's one. Thank you very much, Shireen. I wish I'd asked you at the time, then I would have had a better title. for my particular paper. So can you see what I'm raising here? With the question about the title and how to, you know, tighten up your title. Yeah. Anybody want to come in? If not, then I'm going to give you title challenge number 2. And this one is here at the bottom. Methodology and approaches in community-based environmental education programs in Uganda. Environmental action to community action. How would you make that title shorter and sweeter? Short and clear. I'm going to count to 3, and then you can put your options in the chat again. 1, 2, 3. Go. Come on, guys, give us a new title for the second one. Right, there comes Shireen again. Anybody else? Give us an option. Rios? Evan? One more from somebody. No more. Colleen. Right. Let's vote, guys. Which one stands out for you and why? Anybody want to come in?
I like Priya's one.
Why, Previn?
Because it's describing what's happening from environmental action to community action. But it could be a bit shorter.
Yeah. Anybody else? Shireen likes Colleen's version. Shireen, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I can say I mean, I just quickly scribbled something down about activism because it seemed to be about action. I like the way Charlena's shortened E, just like Priya has, but she's put the focus on methods and approaches, which is what this title seems to be doing. I stuck away with it because I thought the paper would cover that anyway. But I also like community agency because it gives you more scope for the type of action that occurred rather than what I used, which was activism, which is more sort of upfront, in your face type of activity. So yeah, I would go with that.
Okay. And we've got one last offering here from Aro, exploring environmental education programs using community-based lens, case of Uganda. How important is it, do you think, to have Uganda in the title?
I think it is, because the original title had it. So it speaks to a situation that refers to a particular context. And I think that people in the know, or that know Uganda, would find that important. I think I would. I mean, if you talk about South African, a particular country, and it has implications with context, which might bring a totally different spin to the title.
I also think that, yeah, it's important to know the context in, for example, Uganda, but I think the paper might have a bigger reach if we leave out the country and then just focus on methods and approaches. I'm just thinking in terms of other people downloading and finding value in it, and not just restricting it to one region or country.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
For me, the original title was trying to signal a politics of environmental education. And I think it's this difference for me, this difference between environmental education in global North contexts versus global South contexts. Whereas the focus in the global North is environment, nature, or has traditionally been. And one of the problematics, the politics of that is in the global South, that people we need to very clearly and carefully prioritize the relationships, the interrelationships. And so for me, when I read that title, that's what jumped out, the signaling of the shift from environmental action to community action in the space of EE. So I would say Uganda is important because it signals that, it gives a context of practice and says, in this context, this thing is important to us, and this is how we're doing it.
I would agree with that. I think it's more of a grassroots signaler. I would be less interested in reading something that is more vague and doesn't point to some context.
Yes, and one would probably, if it's a case study, the very specifically bound case study, so this in this case would be a specifically bound case study in Uganda, then you would indicate it. You would indicate that.
Yeah.
So what about if one said from environmental action to community action in environmental education? Let me try this quickly, type it out. Because there's also something very specific that's being signaled from environmental action to community action, isn't there?
Do they mean social by community action rather than environmental, I wonder?
Yes, I'm not sure actually. So it's also a bit ambiguous, isn't it?
So people orientated.
Yes. So, or one could say something like surfacing community action in environmental education programs in Uganda, methods and approaches. That could also work, something like that.
Yeah, I think the author needs to clear that up a little bit, because it could be a shift from schools to communities, or it could be also a community development action, or a collective rather than individual to collective. So I think that the author needs to be clearer on that one, I think.
Yes. Anyway, so the main point here, as you will see from these two examples, is that you want to try to find, the shortest and clearest version of your title, which is to the essence of your paper. without including all of the complexities that are in the paper, but still signaling the specificity. Yeah, does that make sense? So you can see that this is a bit of an art, isn't it, in itself, to get the title of your paper clear. So what I'd like to do now is invite you all to put the title of your paper into the chat. So the title of your paper into the chat. I'm going to give you 5 minutes so that you can do a quick revision of it if you want to try to keep it short and get it as short and clear as possible. Let's just take a few minutes to do this. It's such an important activity in So we've got Shireen's one there, very long with very specific words. Can you try to make that shorter, Shireen? So in Colleen's case, Colleen, I would say you probably don't need learnings from a master's education study. Be more specific about, you know, just sort of lessons from higher education projects or something. Okay, Previn's one, Into the Wild, a multidimensional ecological literacy is imperative for creating solutions for climate action. Previn, can you make that shorter? Kati? Teachers leading participatory learning, repurposing school curriculum for sustainable livelihoods through green pedagogical approaches. Kati, can you make that shorter? Supporting pre-service teachers to engage with environment and sustainability education in the PGCE program. Will your readers know what PGCE is, Santle? Does it need to be in the title? Shireen says, what do we lose when we leave out the big words? Question is, do you need them all, Shireen? Does decolonial not also...
I'm looking at it now. Sorry, I meant to make that a private note to Priya. Priya, sorry.
Yeah, so Priya, there's one coming through from Priya, a shorter version. I think that's a much stronger one. Priya.
That's nice.
More possible pathways to and implications for more inclusive, sustainable, and healthy indigenous food systems. Do you need pathways to and implications for in the title, Gamo? Previn, here we come again. Into the Wild, multidimensional ecological literacies, creating solutions for youth-led climate action. Are you creating solutions, Previn?
Probably, but not. Let me try it again.
Shireen's option there, I think, is very nice. I would add, maybe you and Priya can caucus and see. Yes, Priya's given Shireen a comment there. I think there's something between the two of you that you can come to a new version. Zintle, yours is still long. Can it not just be in supporting pre-service teachers to engage with environment and sustainability education through a significant learning approach, or a significant learning approach in framing, because it's framing rather, you're not reporting on the support because you don't have the data from the students. So it's the design that you want to emphasize in your titles and play. Yeah. So it's designing a significant learning approach to pre-service teacher education for environment and sustainability education, something like that. Yes, they were getting nicer, Previn. Into the Wild, curating multidimensional ecological literacies for youth-led climate action. Very nice. And you see, it's got the interest of the paper. It's shorter, it's focused. And it reflects what you're doing, I think. Huh?
Yes, very much. Thanks, Prof.
Yeah. Okay, so if you've got a better version of it now, then just pop it in the chat. Aro, where's your title? I don't see it yet. Kati, have you got a shorter one for us? Colleen, have you got a revised one for us?
No, not yet. I'm just trying to.
Gamo's one is now nice. Yes, thank you, Gamo. That's much nicer, shorter, focused. People can see what it's about. Quickly get the message, you see. If you look at the title, you want to quickly get the main message of the paper. Very nice, Gamo. So Previn's got one. Gamo's got one.
Thank you, Heila.
Where are we now with the others? Let's see if we can all get a good title before we move on. And then if you finished your title, can you put your 5 keywords into the chat? And remember that the keywords are what people, when they go into Google and they search for something, they'll search for your word. So in Kati's case, you definitely want green pedagogy as a keyword. You want sustainable livelihoods as a keyword. Okay, Kati, I'm going to give you one more challenge to cut it back a little bit more if you can. And then your 5 keywords. Yeah, would you not put citizen science as a keyword, since it's such a widely used concept and so many people will type that in?
Yes, we would.
You see, you also think about the searcher when you put your keywords in, like, so who's searching and what are the words they're likely to use that will bring them to your work? Very nice, Kati. Very nice. Nice title. You can see now Kati's title is also nice and focused. You see, you can quickly see what's going on there. We know that teachers work with pedagogy, so you don't need teachers in as well, you see. But now we can see what's going on in that paper. Okay, Priya, I think your keywords are good. I'm wondering if you need collective knowledge and knowledge justice. Is post-abyssal knowledge not important?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's stronger.
Yeah. Okay, pop your stuff in. Colleen's keywords, regenerative sustainability, yes. Whole systems, sustainability in higher education. Do you need social commons and planetary commons, Colleen? What about sustainability projects? Lindley, teacher, professional environment, significant learning. I I think that's nice. Cynthia, you might want pre-service teacher education in there as well. Aro, ESD, social media, activism. Where's your title, Aro? I haven't seen it in the chat. Ah, here it is. Expanding ESD through the use of social media, WhatsApp activism. Okay.
Repost it.
Got it. So you also have to think that not everybody's going to know what ESD is. You know, acronyms, you should avoid an acronym in the title. Eh? We might know our acronyms, but other people don't. Similarly, in your keywords, you don't put an acronym in a keyword. You put the whole word as a keyword. Kati. Very nice, Kati, but you usually only get 5 keywords, so you're going to have to lose one. Priya's asking, Previn, literacy or literacies? You know, sometimes if you end up with the kind of challenge that Priya is posing to Previn, one of the things that you can do is you can go onto Google and you can go into Google search and you can actually test. If you search with ecological literacy, how many hits are going to come up? Okay. If you search with ecological literacies, how many hits come up? You see, and then what you'll probably find through that approach is you'll find the approach that is most widely recognized and used in the search engines. So Previn, I would propose you do that, you know, just jump onto Google, test it out for us and see what you come up with. If you do an advanced search just with the word environmental literacy and you do another search with the word environmental literacies, let's see what you come up with in terms of frequency of hits. Because you know what, when you put in your keywords, you want to attract people to find your paper. So you want the best concepts that are going to bring people to your paper in the searching system, you see. Come on, nice keywords. So that's why you don't want to use, like, if you can call it sort of fashionable words or something that is not well known in your keywords. You can rather keep them somewhere in the paper. The keywords must bring people to your paper. See, so are you able to check that for us quickly, Previn?
Yes, so ecological literacy, the singular, has 998,000 hits, while literacies only has 68,000. So literacy seems to be more
common term. And then what you do in your paper then is you can elaborate that you're not using ecological literacy in the singular, but you're using ecological literacies, you see? So you can do that if you want to do that. So that helps one to decide on your keywords if you just go in and you do a quick check in terms of the search engines, you know, and so on. And what you want to do is have enough words that will bring people to your paper. But if you have specific words that you want to have in there, you have them as well. Like in Priya's case, there's geo stories, you know, it's a kind of not so usual. It's not as usual as, for example, citizen science, but it's something very specific. So she does want to have it in there, but you want citizen science as well, because it'll bring the citizen science community to your geo stories, you see, in the searching system. So this also takes a little bit of work, as you can see, okay, deciding on your keywords as you kind of work towards finalizing the paper. And you can also do just like we've been doing, you know, test them out, test out a few options with yourself, test out a few options with others, check your keywords, check that you're not putting keywords in that are not searched, not going to be found. That's very important. And then make sure that your keywords give you a good coverage, so you are attracting the audiences that you want to come to your paper. So if we look at Gamo's keywords, for example, we can see that she is wanting to attract the people that are involved in nutrition education. She wants to attract people who are, you know, interested in women farmers, indigenous foods, dietary diversity, inclusive agribusiness. See, so there's like a whole system of audiences that are sitting behind those keywords that Gamo has typed in there. She wants to pull those people towards her paper, people in those areas of scholarly work. In Kati's case, people involved in sustainable livelihoods, school food gardens, green pedagogical approaches, indigenous knowledge, photo voice as a methodology. So you'll be able to pull those different audiences towards your paper with those particular keywords. Okay, so those are important. One of the important areas of cleaning up. I'm going to move off that now, and I'm very happy that we're getting some very good titles coming through. And if you've already submitted your abstract, when you resubmit your paper, you can change your title to be an improved version, okay, of the one that went in with your abstract. You can improve your title right up to the end, okay? And sometimes even the reviewers will ask you to, you know, improve the title because it's such a significant marker of what the paper is about. Okay, so let me move on then. Everybody happy with that? We can move on there. Let me check what the time is now. We've still got 3/4 of an hour. Okay. Okay, so then there's this process, the next process of the copy editing and proofing. Once you're happy with your title and your keywords, then you need to start looking at the actual quality of your writing. And that means you need to, you know, look for your own gremlins, and everybody has their gremlins, okay? Every single writer has a gremlin, and all the writers I've worked with over the years, everybody has a different gremlin. They're not the same. And what I mean by a gremlin is that we have our own little, what we call it, sort of odd styles. So some people will use the word just a lot. They'll say, yes, just, and just, and just. Every second sentence has got just in. Others will, like me, always get the apostrophes wrong. Lawrence is always telling me that I just can't write because I can't get apostrophes right. Other people like me as well write very long sentences. So then every time I have to sit and I have to cut my sentences, I have to consciously look at them, cut them. Short sentence, short sentence, short sentence, short sentence. It's hard work. But if you understand and you can see your own gremlins, then it's much easier for you to clean up your own language when you are producing that, you know, semi-final draft that's going in for submission. Does anybody here know what their own gremlins are? Shireen says hers is also. She uses also too much. Who else has got a gremlin that they know about? I also have that same gremlin, Shireen. I also use also a lot. So even here in this sentence, you see, check your own work carefully, but also, you see, I could have just said, check your own work carefully, ask a proofreader. You see, I could have left out, but also, I don't need it. Long sentences, says Priya. Yes, long sentences are. Eish. I have that a lot. Yes, Priya says problematic a lot. I remember that, Priya, from when we were working on your thesis. Previn's gremlin is that he uses the first names of authors in his references. I'm talking about also your style of writing, Previn.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed gremlins in your style of writing. Okay, we're going to do some. Yes, Zintley likes to use pronouns it when at times she needs to state what she's talking about. So everybody has these gremlins. So it's really cool actually to find your own gremlins, because then it helps you to just, you know, do a good cleanup of your work. So here's a few little strategies for us to try to find gremlins. I'm going to do, there's a couple of exercises that we can do together. So let's look at what's happening here. So this is just a nice little set of advice. Okay, so it says try these 10 easy and simple tips to try to write better. Okay, so favor the present tense, favor the active tense, avoid adjectives and verbs that are overly dramatic. Do not use contradictions or abbreviations or contractions or abbreviations, such as repetition is boring. I repeat, repetition is boring. Cut out repetition, guys. You don't need repetition, okay? The passive voice is avoided by good writers. Avoid unnecessary words. So try to find the most necessary words. Keep your writing self-conditioned. Avoid, of course, clearly, obviously, and also, blah, blah, blah. Put details and digressions in footnotes. So if you feel you need to do a whole lot of detail and it's kind of messing with your sentence, shift it to the footnote and then check later whether you really need it or not. So let's look at these 3 little sentences here and let's see if we can phrase them in a better way. Let's try to revise these 3 together. It was going to be done by the participants, but they did not get to do it in the end. How can we rephrase that? Can somebody just throw something in the chat for us? The participants did not do it. Oops. Thank you. Thanks, Pri. Much quicker, much better, much clearer, much tighter. You see? Short, active. You see, this is using passive tense. It was going to be blah, blah, blah. The next one, the participants were absolutely awesome. How would you rewrite that? And what's the problem here? Problem is number 3. Can you see that? Avoid adjectives and verbs that are overly dramatic. How would you rephrase it? Kati says take absolutely out. Yes. The participants were awesome. How else would you write that? The participants were deeply engaged in the process. Yes, I think much better meaning, isn't it, Previn? You're actually indicating much more clearly what the situation was. So it's not just like your opinion. The participants were awesome. You see, so you're getting out of that sort of overly dramatic opinion and you're actually giving more specificity. The participants were deeply engaged in the process. Thank you for that one. Okay, now let's look at this last one quickly. Of course, it could be said that the participants were not interested in the research process, but this could not fully be established by the researcher in the time that was available. Obviously, the researcher should allow more time to engage with the participants. What is the problem here? And how could we do this differently?
Number 8.
Yes, avoid, of course. So we could just say, it could be said that the participants were not interested in the research process, but this could not fully be established by the researcher in the time that was available. Obviously, the researcher should allow more time to engage with the participants. Right, Priya's got one for us. The researcher was unable to determine participant interest in the research process. Further research is required. Thank you, Priya. Much quicker, much tighter, much clearer. So you can see what's happening here. Hey? There's like over elaborations, passive style of writing, using the of course, the clearly, the obvious, all those kinds of words. See, of course, obviously. So of course, so we just need to say the research participants were not interested, or it could not be established, or the researcher was unable to determine participant interest in the research process. Or you could just say participant interest in the research process was unclear. Okay, Colleen's asking about passive voice. Does anybody want to What would you say here? Which of these is passive voice? Can you look at the first one, Colleen? Why would you say that's passive voice?
Prof, I was going to say that the third was passive voice because they're talking about the researcher, and possibly the researcher is the person writing. So I thought maybe it's almost like third party. Yes,
that's third person. Yeah.
Okay, so
how would you change the first sentence from passive to active?
I would respond the way Priya responded, saying that they didn't get to it in the end.
Yeah. Yes. Agree. And the third one? How would you make that more active?
Again, I'm defaulting to what Priya has already put on the group.
Anybody else? How would you make that last one more active? The depth of participant interest was unexplored. Or can we just say more time is needed to engage with research participants? To establish their interest. Can we say that? Same sort of thing, you see. So we can kind of, so what one needs to do then when you are looking at your own writing is try to identify where you're being like, very wordy. And by the way, all of us fall into this trap, except some lucky people who are very clear-minded and who write very, very clearly. But most of us struggle a lot with this sort of over-elaboration and passive tense and so on and so on. So it's often helpful to just ask yourself, can I say this in a much shorter way, much clearer, much more active? And that can then help you to quickly, just do a quick edit across your paper. So you can go across your paper and say, now I'm going to edit for passive and active. Let me check. Am I just being passive all the time or active with a bit of passive? Ultimately you want a little bit of a balance. You don't want to be too strident either in the way that you write. But it helps to check. So this is just one little tool that you can use to help you check and do some of your own proofreading, get a little bit into your own language, try to learn your own gremlins, and then just learn the skills of improving your own writing. This is also a very nice little tool that we used to use in the postgrad studies writing course. I think it comes from Chrissy and the team, but they suggest that we do just, look at some of these kind of what you call kind of keywords that often trip us up, and it can help to clean up our writing a lot if we take out every time we use some. So if you check across your document for some and then see if you're using some, what does some actually mean? You don't want to just say some, you want to say the ways this can be done include, or different ways, or not just some. Some is very vague, you see, to be more specific. One of the most useful ways to achieve this. Well, what is that one of the most useful ways? Can you be specific? Okay. Don't use the word thing. What are you saying when you mean thing? Feedback given in this way is very confusing. Feedback given in this way is confusing. You see, do you need very confusing? And to be, so these kind of little strategies help us to just tighten up our writing. Look out for leading words. So mostly, most times, in order to oftentimes. See, we can look for those kinds of words. And what they do is they help you to just kind of look anew at your sentences, and it helps you to become a bit more specific about what you are saying. So I'll also share this with you, and then you can try that. So what you do is just search for these words and then check yourself. Oh, I've used some. I use some all the time. Why am I using some all the time? You know, I should be more specific about the ways that this can be done. I shouldn't just say some of the ways. Okay. Any questions with this one? Are you happy for me just to leave it for you to work with as a little tool as you go forward? Cynthia says it's often when she reads her work out loud that she realizes that her sentences are too long-winded. Yes, and that's often a strategy that I also recommend to writers, is to read your own work out loud, because man, then you can hear how you're using language, and you can quickly see that what you've written is not really flowing well, or it's too long, or it's got too many complicated words, or so on. So that's, you know, reading to follow your own discourse, read it loud, is extremely helpful to also find your own gremlins, you know. Right, so I'll leave that for you as a second little tool that you can work with. It helps you to do this. And then this is the one I love the most. It's so interesting. Colleen, this helps you to get the point about passive. Whenever you can, how to identify passive voice. If you can insert by zombies after the verb, you have a passive voice. So the research was done by the team, but you could just as well put in by zombies versus the team did the research together. See, so you can, was done by zombies, and then you quickly know that you're moving into passion, moving into the passive. So that's a good strategy for finding overuse of passive voice. And of course, what happens with passive voices is that it often gives us longer, more clumsy sentences, as we saw just now. But we should also be careful of our active voice, that it shouldn't become overbearing, okay? So to try to get a good sort of balance in your writing style is most often the best thing to try to do. There are various grammar programs. Grammarly is one of the most widely used ones. It's now, unfortunately, people charge for these things. There is a free version of Grammarly, I think, for a short while. So if you do want to test out one of those grammar programs, of course, Word also helps a bit with spelling and grammar. So you can use those kinds of programs. Don't use ChatGPT, because it takes out all your referencing and then you're going to be stuck. So be careful when you use these sort of programs to assist you. Choose them carefully. I don't know, Priya, if you know of any of the others. I know you're much more up to speed with these kind of things than I am, that one could recommend. I saw a whole lot this morning, that Grammarly versus this one, and another one versus Grammarly. There's a whole lot of them. Have you worked with them, or has anybody worked with them?
I've used Grammarly, but I see if you just search for free grammar checker, there are a few that come up, but I haven't tried them out. I don't know what's good and what's not. Most of them will probably have a free version and a paid for version.
Yes, and one of the things you have to just watch is if you sign up for the free, then it just starts to subscribe you after a couple of weeks. That's what I've discovered. And then the next thing is, getting stuck with being on subscription, and some of them are quite expensive. So, there are many ways to do this. You can also find a good proofreader who can help you with your language checking. And most often it's advisable to get a proofreader to check your paper before it goes in. Some journals actually require that you get a proofreader to go through your paper before you submit it. And they actually even ask for a letter from the proofreader to say that the proofreader has been through the paper. Because the worst thing you want to do is to get a paper in and ready for review, and then it gets kicked back just because you haven't done the technical cleanup properly. So you must give enough time for the technical cleanup, okay, which is checking grammar, checking spelling, checking punctuation, looking for your gremlins, getting this balance of passive and active, and so on. Okay. Can I move off that now? So use the by zombies, Colleen. Use that'll be helpful. And then here's another third little set of suggestions for copy editing your own work. And it is useful to do copy editing of your own work before you give it to a proofreader. And the reason for that is that you learn about your own writing and you also improve your own writing. And then next time you won't make the same kind of gremlin mistakes. You'll actually be more alert to them. You'll be more conscious and your writing will get better. And remember, we said that you learn to write by writing. You don't learn to write by other people writing for you. Okay, and so here's another thing to look out for is the footnotes or the endnotes. And footnotes and endnotes serve two purposes. So they usually carry elaboration of something that is in your text. So something a key idea that you're working with, but you don't want to elaborate it fully in the text because it's going to break your flow, okay? Then you'll put that into the footnote, or if it's an extensive elaboration, you can put it into an endnote. Some journals don't like footnotes or endnotes. Some journals will allow endnotes, but not footnotes. So you also have to check the journal requirements. Most often, they'll ask you to try to put the footnote into the main text, and then that just forces you to simplify the meaning of the footnote and to align it better with what's in the text. So, you know, the footnotes and endnotes are useful sometimes as holding texts. They can also hold something for you while you get the other stuff right. Then you can come back and see if you can work the footnote into the main text. And then in the case that we were talking about earlier of Priya's paper, Priya and Shireen's paper, if you purposefully don't want a full detailed elaboration of something in the paper because it completely breaks your style or your purpose, then you make an argument for holding it in the back, in the endnotes. In other words, you feel that it is necessary to give elaboration, but it's going to really mess the purpose of your paper in the main text. So you then basically you can make an argument for that. I did that in my PhD thesis because I was working with layers of theoretical depth, and in the main thesis part I was working with it at the second level of theoretical depth, and then I had a third level of theoretical depth, which I then argued I was going to hold in the footnotes because it was an intertextual strategy for me to get to, you know, the 3 layers of theoretical depth that I needed in order to offer a strong thesis. But if I put them all in the main text, the whole thing would have just been a whole muddle and a mess. So I actually consciously did that and then put them into the footnotes. So you can do that kind of thing, but do check the journal style guide for their preference. Then there's this question about quoting and blocked quotes and your own voice, not losing your own voice to too many quotes. Checking carefully that you're not quoting without referencing. That, of course, is very important. So some journals will also put your paper through a plagiarism check, and that's usually to check that if you are quoting directly, that you have acknowledged that. But then you don't want thousands of other people's words in your paper when you've only got 6,000 words yourself, you see? So you need to then say, okay, so now I need to paraphrase or I need to reframe what is coming through here and makes enough space for my own voice, my own argument, and so on. So there's a balance there that you also have to check. And one of the ways of doing is to just check. You'll soon see if you've got too many block quotes. In other words, if you just block quoting after block quoting after block quoting after block quoting, then you know that your voice is not strong enough in the paper. So then you need to go back to all those block quotes and ask yourself, what am I trying to say by including this block quote from X or from Y or from somebody else? And then what you end up with is you end up with those block quotes that are the most essential for your work, that you just can't say in any other way. If you're trying to say it in any other way, You would lose the beauty of its original phrasing, which comes from the other author. So there's a work to do there as well, okay? When you're cleaning up, is to work around checking block quotes. Avoid having too many, rather paraphrase. And the same thing with data. If you're quoting from data, you can't just have reams and reams and reams and reams of quotes from data in a paper. You need a good balance, okay, of the quotes from the data and the discussion of the data. And that's why we need the strategies we were talking about earlier, the reduction strategies, data reduction strategies that we talked about earlier. Yeah, and so the main point here with the issue of too many quotes is that if you have too many quotes from other people, you drown your own voice out. Okay, so you don't want to drown your own voice out. You want to keep your own voice strong, and that the other voices are there to support your argument. Okay, in other words, to support your voice. So you're not rewriting somebody else's paper, and you're not like there to represent their voice. You're there to represent your voice, your argument, and you can draw on them, but it must be in service of your voice, your argument. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's another thing to check. So these 3 slides that I've given you here, copy editing your own work stage 3, copy editing your own work stage 2, copy editing your own work stage 1, and then this sort of little general 10 easy and simple tips. These are strategies, okay, to copy edit your own work, and they will help you to begin to do this refinement as you move towards that, you know, very final draft that you want to get ready to submit. Are there any questions about this? Any comments, any experiences, any thoughts? P, your little... Do you want to speak to your little emojis there?
That was for Colleen. Those are zombies.
Ah, okay. Shireen, you happy?
Yes, I'm very happy, thank you. I think you've given us a lot of things to work with and think about.
Yes, and it's amazing. The first time I learned this was on one of these academic writing courses. And can you believe it? After being in academia for like 20 years was the first time I learned these tricks. Before that, I just used to struggle along, and then Lawrence used to tell me that I was a bad writer. Then I think, okay, well, I just say to him, well, then just edit my work, please. But then he would come in and do it, and then I wasn't always happy with what, you know, the editor does, because sometimes the editors actually take your voice out. So that's why it's very important for you to be able to do it yourself, actually. And then what you do is you don't leave it to the editor. You actually then just give it to somebody to proofread, which is then just to check final errors, you see. So it's a very kind of delicate balance, this thing about editing, copy editing and proofreading. So it's not always a good idea to hand it over to somebody else, because you can lose your own voice in that.
Yeah, we're very aware of that, but we're also grateful, Heila, that you've shared this course with us. The first time I've attended, I know Priya has attended before and still uses what she learned before, and has found the course valuable enough to join again. So it's really great for us to get this. Thank you very much.
Okay, no, cool. Okay, so this is a job to do. So leave enough time for yourself as well to do this kind of a job. So this also shows you that when you're preparing for submission, you need to know what your submission date is, and then you need to leave enough time for final proofread. Then you also need a little bit of enough time for you to do your own copy editing. In other words, to go through this process of checking your own style, language, do a really good cleanup for yourself. Okay, before you hand it over to a formal proofreader. So you need to leave enough time for these processes, because they're all processes, right? Part of the work that we're doing. You need enough time to, you know, check your keywords, check your title, check your abstract, that the abstract that you first wrote will definitely change by the time you finish the paper. So you need to go back and revise your abstract. So you need to do those kind of cleanup jobs. And so you need to leave enough time for the cleanup jobs before you submit. So if you're aiming for a 30th of October submission, then my proposal is that you try to have your best available drafts ready more or less around the 1st of October or the latest about the 5th of October. So you leave yourself 15 days for cleanup because it takes time. I think those of you that have submitted PhDs will know it sometimes takes up to 3 to 6 months to do cleanup on a PhD. So you need time for the cleanup, and often we underestimate that. We underestimate that process and the work that is involved there. Okay, and then another part of the reference, the final part, the finalizing is to check your referencing and then to polish. Keep polishing, it's part of the polishing. So referencing is a whole art in its own right, and I'm not going to go through all of it here. I'll just touch on some of the key things. That one of the big things is in-text referencing, okay? And this is the start of your referencing, because when you are working with other people's work, you must reference it. Now, sometimes we work directly with people's words, such as in this first case. Here, wait, let me just close my office door. There's people in the passage to follow. So when you use the direct words of somebody else, it must be properly quoted. So there you can see as an example, activity theory offers new ways of working with communities. And that then is referenced to Mokute 2021, page 4. When you quote directly, you normally need to give the page number, okay? And the page number refers to where you found the quote in the work of Mokute. If you cite an author, but not directly, and you do not quote from their work, it must have an in-text reference. For example, you're referring to the work of Mokute. So here we're saying Mokute 2010 offers a new way of engaging farmer learning in Southern Africa. So we're referring to his work. He offers this to us. We are building on it, and we reference it. So we find it important to do that. And that's how you then do that kind of in-text referencing. If more than one author's work is supporting a point that you are drawing on, then you will do it like this. Mokute 2010, Kachilondo 2015, and Baloy 2022 all offer examples of how to transform activity with communities through expansive learning in Southern Africa. You see, you're bringing more authors to support your point. So evidence for the claim, right? Evidence for the claim from the other authors. But you have to cite and recognize them. If you cite them in support of your work, so you are making this claim, farmers are able to transform their activity via expansive learning processes, then you would also add them to that particular claim. So you see there's different ways of using the in-text referencing, and it's very important for you to be clear about them and to use the in-text referencing carefully and with integrity in relationship to other people's work. Okay, it's very, very easy to slip on this. It's very, very easy to make a claim as if it's your claim, but in fact it was somebody else's claim first, and you are drawing on it. So you must be careful how you do that in-text referencing. Okay, sometimes that you get a good finding in your work, and it's related to other findings in the field, and then you would indicate that. So you have to get the relationship between your own work and other people's work very clearly framed in the way that you do in-text referencing. So that's the trick of in-text referencing. It's about indicating the relationship between your work and the other person's work. If you're drawing on it, or if you are using it to expand an insight from your work, that's a different relationship, you see, and therefore the in-text referencing shows up differently in the work. Does that make sense? I don't know if there are any questions around that, but it's often an area that can be very, very tricky, and we can often slip with that. So it's very important to do that carefully. Yeah, you happy with that? So that was the main point that I wanted to make about in-text referencing. And then you can go to the specific referencing style guide and you'll find the specifics, because every journal also has its specifics. So there are many different referencing approaches. I think most of you probably know that by now. But every reference that is used in the text must be included in the reference list. And please be careful not to have references in your reference list that are not in the text. So there's a tight relationship between the in-text referencing, these ones, and the reference list. And in the reference list, you offer the full reference. I think everybody knows that. But it's such a tricky issue because there's so many different kinds of referencing styles. So here is MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver. And you can see that each time this exact same reference is different. You see in this first one, they're using our full names in a different sort of style order. Then they're putting the title of the journal in these little, what you call these things? I always forget what they're called. Quotation marks. Okay. And then the title of the journal is in italics. And then the volume, 19, and there's a full stop for the number. And then they put the date of the journal over here, and then the page numbers. Now, can you see how that is done? Look at the next one, right? APA. They use the surname, comma, initial, full stop, comma, ampersand, surname, comma, initial, full stop, and there's the date, okay, in brackets, okay, and then there's the title of the journal article, not in quotation marks, you see, and there's the name of the journal, Mind, Culture, and Activity. And there's the number of the journal. Look at that, 19, but this time it's in italics, or the volume of the journal is volume 19. The number of the journal is in italics now. It's not a full stop, you see. And then there's the page number, but it comes after a comma, not after a, I don't know what that is in English, double punt. I learned it when I was at school in Afrikaans. Double punt. So can you see what happens with each referencing style is it's always differently put together. So here, look at Chicago now. Looks very similar to MLA, but look at how the journal number is represented, the volume and the number 19, number 4. It's different to this one, 19.4. So that's why referencing is quite a pain. It's always a pain for me, an enormous pain, because every time you have to check what is the journal style, and then you have to get your reference in the style of that journal. Okay, so if the journal is using Harvard, well, then you've got to get that reference that you used to have in APA into Harvard. If the journal is using Vancouver, then you have to take it from what you used to have it in APA in blah, 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 blah. So that's why people use referencing programs, okay? And then Priya showed me this amazing trick a couple of years ago, which I'm going to ask her to show you now as well. Because if you go to Google Scholar, then you can search for this paper. And then if you go to the little thing called Cite, then you get all of these versions and you can quickly get the version that you need. In other words, if the journal is working with APA, you can get that reference in APA, but you must still check it because they're not always 100% correct. Okay. So this is very important. Colleen, I don't know what style the ESA journal uses nowadays. Do you?
Prof, it's APA.
APA, good.
Yes.
And then also there's a little bit of a trick here because APA has just changed. So APA also changes. So there's a version 6, there's a version 7. I think we're on version 7 now, are we?
Prof, I think it's version 8 now.
Version 8, okay. So the way to find out how the latest version of APA works is to look for APA referencing on the internet and it'll give you the latest version. But this little trick that Priya showed me is also very helpful. It does help a lot. So I'll ask Priya to show it to us. So Priya, do you want to show us that little trick on Google Scholar?
Sure, Prof.
Yes, the most amazing trick. Thank you very much for teaching it to me a few years ago.
You see here?
Yeah.
So you go to Google Scholar, not the normal Google, and you just pick up a reference. And if you see at the bottom here, I'll teach you, since I'm showing you, I'll show you a couple of things. If you go to cite, then it gives you the different styles. You have to double check it though, because the authors sometimes don't do a good job of uploading it and then it doesn't format properly. So you can just copy paste it from here. You can also, if you've got referencing software, you can import it straight to your referencing software over there. I'll just show you one more quick thing. If you are not on campus or struggling to access a paper, if you go here where it says all versions, all 4 versions, all 8 versions, it'll open up wherever that paper is on the web. And sometimes you get lucky and you find the PDF copy on, somewhere like ResearchGate or something like that, a university website. So those are just 2 quick tricks.
Thank you so much, Priya. And that does help a lot with getting your references consistent. Yeah, and then Colleen says, Kim, the copy editor has examples on the SAGI website of APA referencing. So you can find that there. But thank you very much, Priya, for that. That was the most empowering tip I ever came across because I hate referencing. Okay, so then that is, I think, more or less near the end of where we're getting to. The next last step. So once you've got all your references nicely sorted out and properly checked between the in-text and the reference list, they recommend normally between 30 to 40, somewhere around there, 20 to 40 references for journal articles. So you also don't want to over-reference in a journal article. And that's sometimes a bit tricky as well. So just be careful that you're not putting 200 references into a 6,000 word journal article. So you need to, they often ask you actually to cut back on your references. They'll say there's too many. So just keep an eye open for that as well. Okay. So then the last step is actually then to submit your paper when you've got all those things ready. And to submit your paper, you go to the journal website and you look for the submission guidelines. Here I've put the SAGI web link on if you're going to submit your paper to the SAGI. Once you hear back from your abstracts, those that are working for the special issues, then you just go in there and you can submit your paper to that. Most often the journals are using these online journal submission systems, and I was hoping Colleen can maybe just give us a few tips there for submitting your paper. Colleen, can you give us a couple of tips for when you submit a paper? What are the things you need to do?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. So first of all, you're going to have to create an account. You need to register. Then once you've logged in, there is the option of submission. So I'm happy to find the site and just share screen, Prof, if you're happy with that.
Can you do that? That would be very cool, just to show us, and then it'll be easy for everyone. And most journals have got these online sites, and they're more or less the same. You know, some are a little bit more tricky than others. I find that they and don't forget your password, right? Once you've signed into a site, that's what happens to me. I always forget my password, then I don't know how to get back into it. So keep a note of your password when you, there you are, you see you need a password.
So if you just type into your URL agile.info/SAGI, it will take you to the home screen. You will then get the opportunity, you'll then be able to log in if you've already registered. Once you've logged in, you will have, it's just very, very recently been updated at the end of June. So submissions are in the top left-hand corner. So you'll go to submissions and you will create a new submission here on the right side. And then you work through the system prompts. So it'll say, you've read the author guidelines. You'll ensure that your author name does not appear on the actual manuscript. The submission.
Yes, so Colleen, just on that, normally you would put your author names on a separate sheet. Okay, so you have to take them off the top of your paper. And
Yes.
that is because the paper has to be blind reviewed. Eh?
Yes, that's correct. Also, because you've created a profile, it will have all your detail there, and the system will prompt you to add any co-authors. So,
okay. So that goes in
yes, on the system. And that will be just following the system prompts, but the uploaded paper submission must not have any reference to your name or your code.
So if you, for example, are citing a paper that you wrote in your article, so say, for example, Zintle is writing a paper about teacher professional development, and she cites Sonkwahu 2022 or 2021 because she's written about it before, then she has to take out her name in that reference and she has to say author 2022, or if there's 3 of you writing together, then it's author 1, author 2, and author 3. So the references to any works that you've done also have to be anonymized. And that's also for blind review purposes. So what's good to do is to keep the original version and then make a second version, which is the anonymized version. And then you upload the anonymized version for peer review, the first round of peer review. When you eventually come to the final version, you'll need all those references again. So don't, throw them away. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay, Colleen, do you want to carry on? Anything further?
So you'll take a look. There are tabs at the top in blue. So the system will automatically take you through each of these sections. So first, you just you are acknowledging that you've gone through the guidelines and some other points to note. Then you will actually upload the submission. Then it's the metadata. Now the metadata is the detail about the authors, the co-authors, the abstract, the title, and then you'll move through to the confirmation and you'll finalize the submission. And then it will
and the keywords come under metadata, Colleen?
Yes, there's a system prompt after you've added your abstract to add in the keywords.
Okay, awesome.
So just at the top, it always says a save and continue, and then it will take you through to the next step.
Yes. Okay, thanks for showing that to us, Colleen. I just wanted us to have a little peep into it so that we have a sense of this is also part of the process that we go through as we get to this last phase of our journal production work. Let me just get back into the share screen. Okay, so now we're at submission and we've seen how we do submission. And then you wait. So what you've got to do then is wait for peer review. And I love this particular little picture. It says peer review is not posting your ideas to Facebook and waiting for replies. Peer review actually takes quite a bit of time because the journal editors then have to look at the paper and then they have to send the paper out for peer review, which means they have to send it out to other reviewers. Most often these days, the reviewers are very busy. They don't have a lot of time because people are busy writing instead of reviewing. And so it's often quite a big job to get the peer reviews coming in. And you have to have, is it 2 or 3 blind reviews for the SAGI now, Colleen? I've forgotten.
It's 2, Prof.
2. So you normally get 2 peer reviews on your paper. So the editors will choose those reviewers and ask them to review your paper. Colleen will continuously remind them until the reviews come in. Then the editor has to look at the reviews, and then they'll send that back to you. And normally you'll get feedback, and you'll normally get suggestions as to how to improve the paper, which you then need to take a look at carefully. You respond carefully to them. Don't get emotional. Make a table. Look carefully at what the reviewers are suggesting, and then you respond and you indicate how you've responded to the reviewers' comments. And then you resubmit your paper, and then the journal editors will then check. Sometimes they will send them back to the reviewers again if the reviewers wanted major changes. Otherwise, the editor will check that you've responded adequately to the reviews, and then your journal will get to the point of being accepted for publication. So it's a long road, but it's not an impossible road. And there are many people that are involved in journal publishing. And ultimately, it's important for us to, as we said when we started this course, to get the knowledge that we're producing in the Global South into the spaces where people can actually read our work and use our work, because that's also how the next generation of scholarship is built. So from my side, I think we're at the end of the course now. I just wanted to say a very big good luck to all of you for the final rounds of the work. Your tiny text, as you've seen, is grown, and it's growing into its own word garden. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of these beautiful word gardens coming through into the journal. And we will do our very best to support the process of getting them to the point of publication. So it's also, just as much as it's a writer and a reader, there's also the editorial teams that are working behind the scenes too, and the journal managers like Colleen that are working behind the scene to actually get these materials out into the world that you have worked so hard on. So I think it's just a big good luck to all of you. And I think everybody knows that this course was a free course, and purposefully so. And the only little thank you that we would love to have is when your journal article gets published, to please send us a copy, because then we can also see that it's, we can also then see how these courses are working and what the outcomes of the courses are, because it's important for us also to get that sort of general feedback and to see. I've seen some of our best scholars' work has been coming through from these courses, because it helps you to learn how to do it better, and then become really good at it. So all the best of luck to everybody for that. And if there are any final comments from anybody in the chat, maybe we can just open our cameras and just offer a final reflection from each of you on, where you find yourself now. And I hope you've still got good spirits to keep going and to finish the papers and get them submitted. So let's maybe just open our cameras and just last word from all of you. Right. How are you feeling, Priya, after having done this course quite a number of times?
I like it, and I'll do it again. It's very useful.
And thank you for joining us again. It's always awesome to have you there. It always makes me feel like, oh, this is still something that's worthwhile.
I like the changes with the using the tiny books as holding, not holding text, framing text. That was nice. Yeah.
I also tried to produce another metaphor for it, so it's less, yeah. Prevan, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the course. It's been really practical, and with some really good methods I'm definitely gonna be using. And yeah, it's very motivating to send in a paper. So I want to do that as soon as possible.
Thanks, Prevan. Thanks also for helping with the online platform. Yeah. Gamo, how about you? You've also been doing a lot of back-end helping here, and how's it been for you?
Yeah, I think the course has been very great for me. I haven't gone further like others have done, but I was just using some of the notes that you have been telling us about, like, for example, coming up with a short title, and also just being specific on mostly the research questions, what I really need to do. And it also helped me, like with Kati, she was consistently coming for the Pomodoros and writing circles. So when she was doing her work, I was also doing mine. So yeah, thanks so much for this.
That's great. Help each other, hey?
Yes.
Cynthia, I'm so happy to see you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I actually enjoyed it.
Hi,
And I
Cynthia.
think, hi, I think this thing of working together during the sessions and then having tasks to work away and then come back and reflecting, I think that has kept me going. Actually, otherwise, if I did not have to be writing and reporting and reflecting and all the prompts that I received, I would not have managed to be at the point where I am right now. Thank you.
Great. And I'm looking forward to that paper. I think it's going to be a great one. Kati, how about you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to learn. I think I've learned a lot. I really appreciate your time. It was quite interesting. Gamu, thank you very much. I will sometimes ask, am I the only one? Yeah, but it was worth it. I really appreciate. Thank you very much. I'm about to run to work. I was attending from home.
Sure. And good luck with the finishing off of those two papers, Kati. We're looking forward to seeing them coming through. Last word from Aro and then from Shireen and Colleen, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, thanks so much, Prof. Yeah, to me it was very helpful. And if I may be honest, I've never attended a workshop that teaches me on how to write an article. So it was like just reading articles, then trying to write based on what has been written by someone. And I think it becomes challenging that way because, you are just, you see something that has been already published, then trying to learn from it is difficult. But for us here, where we started from scratch, I think it was quite helpful. I saw how to develop, I learned how to develop an article from just nowhere, unlike reading an article that has been reviewed, published, then you try to learn from it. I think we really need that as young scientists, as young researchers. Thanks so much.
Yes, no, thanks, Aro. And also, I think for me, the first time somebody actually taught me how to do this, I realized just how important it is actually to be learning how to do these things. We don't just wake up one morning knowing how to write an academic paper.
Yes.
It's quite a specialist skill in its own right. So the PowerPoint is on the Miro board with all of these 4 sessions, all of the details. So you can go back and revisit and see everything. You can also share. And, if other people need some support, you can share it with them. This is common property. It's not what you call it, locally owned property. So please do use it because I know that it does help all of us, actually, and that's important. Shireen, and then Colleen, and then we'll wrap up.
Sorry, I was off there for a moment. I was just looking for the link to the Miro board. Maybe somebody can just post it again, just so that I know I have it. I wanted to just to say, I think for me, I mean, this is journal writing is not a thing for me yet, but having tried to do various pieces of writing, one gets stuck so quickly on your own. And as Priya said, that little text was really useful in that it provides you with a frame to get unstuck. So I appreciated that. So we had not too much and not too little information, but what we did get was key things tested, or shall I say battle tested, which was very useful. And sorry, Gamu, that we couldn't be on site with you during your Pomodoros, but Priya did simulate something like that for me in many virtual meetings. So we did write alongside. So what I wanted to the point I wanted to make is that the course's time schedule is nicely set out for us to be able to work on our own and then come back and give feedback. So that was really great. So what I like is the timing of the course allowed us to come to a point where we actually have a product. Okay, it still needs to be refined, but I think that that is also something that has been refined over time for this course, that it gives the participants enough time to do something for which I'm very grateful. Other than that, the encouragement to just be together is really wonderful, especially for us that is far-flung and not easy to meet in person. So yeah, I think I've covered everything that I had thought of in this quick little space of time. So thank you very much, Heila. I do appreciate it. And I will refer back to that mirror board and its materials often, I'm sure.
Yes, I've put the mirror board in there. What I will do now also is just send the PowerPoint out to all of you, because, you know, the PowerPoint and the mirror board are two spaces that hold the same thing. And you can download the PowerPoint off the mirror board. So if you ever lose the PowerPoint or whatever, you can get it from both spaces. So, okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
From me, I just found this process very valuable, and it was just so much learning. And I love the little zombies. I'm not going to get forget in a while. But thank you very much.
Zombies, then you know you're in the passive tense.
Yeah. So thanks everyone. The accountability, that was also quite valuable in actually progressing the learning. So I appreciate being part of this group and the support that was here. Thanks.
Thanks, Colleen. We're also looking forward to your paper coming through. So I think we're looking forward to these papers coming through. Amazing amount of number of abstracts that we've received, and hopefully all of our writers will be, you know, keep going with us and also bring those papers through to conclusion into the journal. We need to feed our journal. Our journal needs all of our voices. So let's do that, and then also start your work, share your work outwards to other journals as well. I think Priya, you and Shireen have probably got a whole system of stuff that you're busy posting outwards. So keep doing it, guys. And very nice to work with you. I enjoyed it as well. It's been fun to do again. So have a good day further, wherever you are. Bye.
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 Bye.